GETTYThe Queen toured the Hyde Park BarracksBig Red, the stable name of the regiment's new 17.1 hands high drum horse, nodded his head towards the 91-year-old monarch when she officially named him Perseus. The 9-year-old bay-colored Shire horse, who is a major like all horses carrying drummers in the Household Cavalry Band, is the joint most senior animal in the British Army. Perseus, named after the character from Greek mythology, was ridden by Lance Corporal Richard Brown in full ceremonial dress. The Queen and Charles made their joint visits as part of a new policy of the monarch's children accompanying her on some official engagements now that Prince Philip has retired from official duties at the age of 96. YUI Mockpad Queen admires Pegasus, the new drum horse arriving together at Hyde Park Barracks in Knightsbridge, home to the Blues and Royals, and the Lifeguards, the oldest and most senior regiments in the Army, which together make up the combined regiment providing the monarch's mounted escort. The Queen and Charles were met by Major General Sir Edward Smith-Osborne, the commander of the Household Cavalry. Smiling broadly and wearing a sky blue Stuart Parvin cashmere coat, matching Angela Kelly hat and 2 military brooches, the Queen, a lifelong equestrian, was in her element, talking horses. The regiment's commanding officer, Lt. Colonel James Gassely, asked the Queen to officially name Perseus. The officer's father, Nick Gassely, a former national hunt trainer, trained Charles as an amateur jockey in the early 1980s, and his daughter, Sarah Jane, James Gassely's sister, was a bridesmaid at Charles and Diana's wedding. Perseus is currently undergoing intensive, specialized training for a role as the Blues and Royals drum horse with the Household Cavalry Band, and is set to pass out on the Queen's birthday parade next June. After the naming ceremony, the Queen went to stables where she was shown Wellesley, the Duke of Cambridge's great charger which he rides at Trooping the Colour. The Queen then met troopers of the Blues and Royals and Lifeguards with their horses, and was shown Johnny, actually a mare pronounced Joni, a young horse she gave to the Household Cavalry last year who is undergoing training to be a charger for the Lifeguards. She's quite small, the Queen remarked, as Lt. Colonel Gassely explained that the mare is only 4 years old, so is still slight for a horse, but will grow in muscle and build. The Queen gave Johnny a polo mint, and joked for it as the horse bared its teeth and curled its lip to savor the taste of the mint. The Queen then visited the forge, where she was shown Quinn, a horse with his musculature painted onto his coat in white paint. She listened as Major Harriet Church, the regiment's vet, explained how they use the technique to teach the soldiers about the horse's physique and how to give first aid. Tuesday, October 24, 2017, Queen Elizabeth II during an official visit to the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment at Hyde Park Barracks on October 24, 2017 in London. Chris Jackson GETTYThe Perseus, named after the character from Greek mythology, was ridden by L. Corporal Richard Brown. Educational company Horses Inside Out staged the demonstration with anatomist Gillian Higgins from the organization explaining her work around the world to the Queen. "It's a very good idea," the Queen said. "But does the paint come off?" Miss Higgins explained that the paint was water-based, hypoallergenic and non-toxic. Prince Charles visited the forge where he heard about the farrier's apprenticeship program from farrier Major Chris Thomas. Chris Jackson GETTYThe Queen and the Prince of Wales posed with the officers at Hyde Park Barracks. She was then shown the tack room, where the Master Saddler, Corporal of Horse Samuel Belasco, outlined the painstaking process of preparing for major events like Trooping the Colour, state visits and royal weddings. Inside the tack room, 2 troopers were polishing their boots, helmets and other parts of their ceremonial kit. "Do you have to put polish on after every time you go out?" Charles asked Trooper Thomas O'Mara, before asking Trooper James Fisher about his knee-high ceremonial boots. "How do you walk in those?" "It's very difficult, sir," replied Trooper Fisher. Concluding their visit, the Queen and Charles sat for a photograph with the regiment's officers and warrant officers. Before leaving, the Queen was presented with a posy by Grace Hogg, daughter of James Hogg, the HQ Squadron Corporal Major. Chris Jackson GETTY, a young fan, gets a little too close to the Queen with his Union flag. All members of the Household Cavalry are dual-rolled, but consider themselves operational reconnaissance soldiers first and foremost. Ready for short-notice operations, at home or abroad, the regiment continues an unbroken tradition of service to the country spanning nearly 4 centuries. In the armored cavalry role, their task is to reconnoiter swiftly ahead of other forces, scouting for the enemy and understanding the terrain. In London, the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment provides the Army's mounted state ceremonial public duties capability, the public face of the Army to the world and the mounted escort to the Queen. This summer, soldiers from Hyde Park Barracks have participated in the Queen's birthday parade, the Spanish state visit, and deployed alongside the police on Operation Temporer to provide armed security for key sites in London in the wake of the terrorist attack on Manchester. Chris Jackson GETTYThe Perseus is undergoing intensive training for a role as the Blues and Royals drum horse.